In the way that the Clinton presidency is largely remembered for its transition to the internet, I think that in the long term, we may view the Trump years as the second administration as the AI presidency in terms of the way that our economy and our life and all of that were transformed. And in that, I think there's a lot going on here. And first and foremost is an interesting clash within technology itself. So this will be a huge fight going forward around export controls. So a lot of people were passing around after the DeepSeek revelation, but that Alexander Wang clip where he was like, look, they obviously have more NVIDIA H100s than they can admit because they're going around export controls. And then I was not even aware of this, how 20% or whatever of NVIDIA revenue is in Singapore. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure Singapore leads a lot of chips. It's like, oh, fascinating, right? It's obviously leakage in terms of export control to China. It makes sense, too, why NVIDIA was pushing back so hard in the later days of the Biden administration against tightened export control rules. I hadn't followed it fully at the time, but putting it all together, it's starting to click how much of revenue that they alone are also kind of relying on by transshipping chips. But so at a broader level, we have like a couple of choices and interesting paths. Like one would be, okay, we should just go full open source. These companies should stop individually chasing the 75 billion per quarter on AI. We should focus on efficiency. Well, one of the tells to me that DeepSeek was not quote unquote as revolutionary as people said is because the companies are still spending the money. And so what they took away from that, as I understand by OpenAI and others, is that they saw that their model was used by the DeepSeek hedge fund to train off of. And so actually what's happening is the net effect of what happens whenever you have kind of breakthrough technology. If we think about it like the atom bomb, well, what happens is that inevitably you have scientists copying other scientists, and so that leads to closed circles, secrecy, closed models, national security concerns, and overall like geopolitical implications of your individual business decisions, such that it no longer really becomes about NVIDIA or Meta stock. It becomes about the United States of America. And I think this will be a very difficult thing for NVIDIA, for Meta, for Google, and all of them to deal with, because I think that in their hearts, at least in the past, they really were globalists. And it makes sense. You know, Meta is their user base. The vast majority of them are not Americans, but you're headquartered here. Sorry. And Mark Zuckerberg, you're waving your American flag around on your surfboard or whatever. So you've planted your flag quite literally.
How far we've come from him trying to name his kid after she's...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, after doing that, as you and I know, which is even more hilarious in retrospect. So putting all of that together with the DeepSeek thing, you basically see it laid out by J.D. Vance in his policy speech, where he's like, we want America to be the leader in AI. We will not allow, espionage on our companies. So we're going to see literal walls begin to go up, much tighter export control, a recognition that these companies and this technology is vital and of interest. And I don't really think there's any way out of it, to be honest, because I was really thinking about it, and it's like, well, what is the alternative? Because we could try to have some path of not going down that, but it's very clear that the Chinese, especially in the case of DeepSeek, I mean, this idea that it's $6 million or whatever to run is ludicrous. It obviously cost over $1 billion to train the model before it eventually got to the point where it could run off of that $6 million. It's clearly subsidized and at least pushed and allowed by the Chinese government, who themselves, I'm not sure you've seen it, Alex, but the Chinese tech stocks are roaring on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange right now as a result of the DeepSeek thing. So the government has its own interest and control and all of that behind the scenes for them, and the Chinese are never going to move away from their own firewall model. So in a sense, naturally the United States, especially to preserve so much of the enterprise value and the genuine technological breakthrough, doesn't really have a choice but to behave quite similarly. And I just think that's an inevitable kind of Thucydides trap of any great superpower competition on any technological basis.
I want to ask you a similar question that I asked Alexander Wang when he was here, which is, why is it such a strategic liability if China takes the lead on AI models? Like just take DeepSeek, for example. Yes, they definitely trained with a lot more money than they said they did to build this R1 model. However, the R1 model is like undeniably cheaper to run.
Yep.
And so now you have US startups using that model to build products they probably couldn't build in the past. So talk a little bit about why it's so strategically important for the US to have the lead and not China.
There's a couple different ways. I mean, first and foremost is just, actually, let me give you a really meta way that he's probably never going to admit, and this is the truth. America has decided that our retirement plan is number go up, and our numbers need to go up. That number can't go up if we're number two, right? If we're subject in the 20% of our GDP, which is technology, the fastest growing sector. The Magnificent Seven comprises what percentage of the S&P 500?
It's like 20 to 25%, depending on the day, or 30% sometimes.
Let's look at this realistically. Like at a basic level, we don't have a choice. Like we have all chosen that America retires because the number goes up, and the number's not going to go up if we're not the leaders in the technology, because it means that we won't be able to unlock the enterprise value and have all of the benefits of network capitalism and AI. But at a more like basic level, the United States, especially with respect to technology, with with research and everything, the implicit deal that we've all made is that, like I said, we're not going to have government retirement or government healthcare or any of that. But in exchange, we will be the leaders of the global economy of the world, and rule the rules-based international order to the benefit of the American consumer. And so at a really like high level, strategic wise, it's the same reason why Sputnik simply could not be allowed to stand. It's because even if the terms and the way that we're fighting seem ridiculous, the notion of space supremacy by our adversary or technological supremacy beating us in that category just means their ability to compel our behavior. So at a very like meta level, in terms of why it's strategically important, it really gets back to that Thucydides trap idea of when your adversary is to choose development down a closed path, which would allow technological dominance over you. You either have a choice to like reach your hand out, shake hands, have some mutual agreement where that's simply not going to happen, and then have the trust and the enforceability in such a contract that you can ensure things stay smooth. That's not going to happen, unfortunately, or you have the chance to respond. And so, I don't even think of it as AI. I think about it as the way I would any breakthrough technology. I would give you the exact same answer.
Yeah, and there's been some talk that like, okay, well, AI is both a business, but it's also a weapon. And I am curious, like, J.D. Vance recently said the fears about AI are overblown. So where do you stand on that question? Because
I think about it every day. So every day, I either am an alarmist or I just think it's all ridiculous. So you and I want.
It's funny how you go back and forth. The same thing happens to me, where I'm like, the ChatGPT can't tie its shoes, but on the other hand, you're like, oh no, this can control computers and build deep research reports. Like, oh god, what's going to happen?
That's
next?
how I feel. So I use Claude. I'm a Claude guy. I can't really tell you why. I just like the interface. For data analysis,
we talk about it a lot. It's pretty nice to talk to. Like, it actually feels less bot-like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for data analysis, look, I'm not the typical person. I'm not a coder, any of this stuff. You know what I really use it for? Personal finance. I go, how much money have I spent on groceries this year? And I'll be like, here, this is your breakdown.
That's a pretty cool use case. I haven't heard that before. So you upload your bank statements and talk to it about it?
So I have a budget app which has all my transactions, and then I downloaded my transactions for the last 7 years, uploaded it to Claude, and I go, so how much money do I spend on milk? How much money do I spend on eggs? What's my average burn rate on travel? So, and then also you can calculate to the literal dollar not only your spending, but then your discretionary spending, your non-discretionary spending, and then if you're trying to budget and project, like let's say investments, I use it for investment analysis all the time. So cool. I'll be like, if I dollar cost average $200 a month into X stock based on historical returns, what is my expected over a 10-year period? And it's spits out charts. It's fantastic.
Should I have it do my taxes? Like I'm thinking
Dude,
like I can just upload all my books and see what
I
it
know
can do.
the problem is legally you're getting dicey, right? So like when I'm doing some bullshit stock analysis, like the stakes are not that high, but with doing your taxes,
I mean, I would obviously
there's
double
existential
check.
Stakes.
But
Yeah, I mean maybe you should try it. Tell me what you think.
I'll keep you posted.
But
It's a
okay,
cool use
so
case.
thinking about AI, have you ever used Tesla full self-driving?
I haven't driven with it, but I've been in the car when someone put it on.
Okay, so I have a Tesla and I have full self-driving. So that's where I don't buy the AI hype. I have been hearing for years, oh, this car is going to drive itself. No, it's not. Tesla can barely turn left, bro. And even when it does, turn left, it turns left like a right angle, you know? Or just the other day, you'll love this example because this just shows how dynamic and difficult it is to try and accomplish this problem. It snowed and the snow got caught in the lights, the red light, like in the cup that holds the lights. So the Tesla could not distinguish whether it was red or whether it was green. So my eye I could tell like, oh, right up there, there's a little bit of red light, green light. But there's so many different things, or there's areas where I live where you can park in this lane sometimes, but not others. And so the Tesla, if it sees it open, will want to get into that lane, even though I know, like, oh, it's 4 p.m., I can't get there. My point is that even with all of the hype, and even with, let's be real, the best self-driving technology available in the US, it's not that useful unless you're on the highway. Is it that much better than Toyota's or than Honda's assisted autopilot? Yeah, it's good. It can change lanes and stuff like that, but I've been in a BMW that can change its own lanes. So my point is that even with Tesla, which has thrown billions at this problem, which is the world's leader and all of that, I've owned this thing for a couple of years and it's definitely gotten better, but it's not that great. And that's as in I'm not taking my hands off the wheel anytime soon.